Welcome back, deep divers. Today we are going to be going into some really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, we've covered some pretty intense topics before,
Okay,
but
yeah.
this one is going to be a challenge even for us.
Yeah, agreed.
So we're looking at some excerpts from Lesson 23, The Crucifixion of Jesus.
Okay.
And it looks like it's some sort of religious teaching document, but it's got some really interesting historical stuff in there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we're going to try to separate fact from fiction.
Okay.
Uncover the brutal reality of crucifixion as a form of capital punishment,
Right.
and see what it means specifically in the story of Jesus.
Sounds good.
So get ready. It's going to be a wild ride.
It is a grim subject, that's for sure.
Yeah.
To really get the full impact of crucifixion, you have to understand just how cruel it was.
Right.
I mean, even Josephus, the Jewish historian, called it the worst kind of death.
The worst kind of death.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a chilling statement.
It is.
What made it so horrific?
Well, it wasn't just about the final moments on the cross.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It was a whole orchestrated process
Okay.
designed to inflict suffering at every stage.
Okay.
It often began with scourging.
Okay.
So being whipped with a heavy lever whip,
Oh, wow.
meant to tear flesh.
Okay, so even before we get to the nailing part,
Right.
they're already weakened and suffering.
Yeah, and humiliated. You know, they were paraded through the streets.
I see. So
It was a very public display.
it's about breaking the person's spirit,
Exactly.
not just their body.
Yeah.
Wow. And,
And speaking of nailing,
yeah.
there's debate about whether victims were nailed through the hands or the wrists.
Oh, right.
Our sources suggest the wrists were more likely,
Okay.
as they could support the weight of the body better.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I did notice the sources mention something called a sedile.
Yes.
It sounds like a seat, which I highly doubt they were giving anyone comfort during a crucifixion.
No.
What was its purpose?
Well, the sedile was a small seat or peg attached to the cross. Some historians believe it might have been used to prolong the agony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would prevent the victim from slumping down and potentially suffocating,
Oh, I see.
which would draw out the suffering even more.
So just another level of just horrific detail.
Yeah, crucifixion was really meant to be a spectacle of suffering.
Right. A very public warning to anyone
Precisely.
who might step out of line.
It was a deterrent designed to instill fear in anyone who might challenge Roman authority.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because it wasn't always done the same way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have accounts of different cross shapes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, X and Y shapes,
Yeah.
crosses, even just a single upright pole.
Huh. So the Romans weren't.
It seems like there wasn't a strict standardized method.
I see. So they
They adapted it as needed.
just wanted to inflict the maximum amount of pain possible.
The goal was always the same.
Yeah.
A slow, agonizing death.
Now, shifting gears a bit, because
Yeah.
the source mentions Psalm 22, written by King David,
Yeah.
like 1,000 years before Jesus,
Right.
as a possible prophetic foreshadowing of crucifixion.
Right.
What makes them think that?
Well, if you look at verses 6 through 18,
Yeah.
you'll find some incredibly vivid imagery
Okay.
that lines up surprisingly well with the details of crucifixion.
Okay.
For example, verse 7 talks about mockery from onlookers,
Yeah,
which was very common during crucifixions.
it was.
Verse 16 mentions pierced feet, and verse 18 describes people gambling for the victim's clothing.
It's strange to think that David, writing centuries before crucifixion was even practiced,
Right.
could describe elements of it so accurately.
It is.
Did he even understand what he was writing, do you think?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The source suggests that David, perhaps writing under divine inspiration, might not have fully grasped the specific method of death he was describing.
Okay, so he's
Now,
like,
the imagery of the psalm,
yeah,
things like the desperate plea for rescue in verse 8,
right.
or the intense thirst and exhaustion in verse 15,
Yeah.
aligns incredibly well with the suffering of a crucified person.
So are we looking at a case of prophecy being fulfilled?
It certainly raises some fascinating questions
Yeah, it does.
about divine inspiration and the nature of prophecy itself.
This is what I find so captivating about these deep dives.
Yeah,
We're not just unearthing historical facts,
right.
but we're grappling with huge questions and profound ideas.
Absolutely, and we're just getting started.
Okay.
Let's move on to the account of Jesus' crucifixion in Luke chapter 23, verses 26 through 38.
Okay.
This passage takes on a whole new level of meaning when you consider the historical context we've just discussed.
Okay, so Luke 23,
26 through 38.
26 through 38. What should I be paying close attention to here?
Well, keep in mind the physical and emotional agony Jesus would have been experiencing at this point.
Right.
Yet amidst all that suffering, there's this striking moment of forgiveness.
Oh, okay.
In verse 34, Jesus prays, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing."
Wow. It's remarkable to think he would pray for forgiveness for those who were putting him to death.
It really highlights the contrast between his physical torment and his inner peace and capacity for forgiveness.
The source throws in another interesting connection here, comparing Jesus to the Passover lamb.
Oh, right.
And mentions 1 Corinthians 5.7. What's the significance of that comparison?
Well, this is where the theological significance really starts to unfold.
Okay.
To understand this, we need to understand the Passover lamb.
Right.
It was a central figure in the Jewish tradition,
Uh-huh.
symbolizing liberation and redemption.
Right. The Passover lamb's blood saved the Israelites from death during the plague in Egypt.
Exactly.
But what does that have to do with Jesus?
Well, 1 Corinthians 5.7 explicitly calls Jesus our Passover.
Oh, okay.
So we need to ask, what are the similarities between Jesus and the Passover lamb?
Okay.
Both were male and without blemish, meaning they were perfect and innocent.
Okay.
Both were killed unjustly.
Right.
And most importantly, both died to save others.
So the source is arguing that Jesus is fulfilling the symbolism of the Passover lamb,
Exactly.
but on a much grander scale.
He's presented as the ultimate sacrifice,
Wow.
the one whose death brings about a new kind of liberation, not just from physical slavery, but from the bondage of sin.
This is some pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
It's fascinating how all these seemingly disparate pieces, like the brutality of crucifixion, David's psalm, the Passover lamb,
Right.
all come together to create a richer understanding of Jesus' death.
And that's just the first layer of the story.
Okay.
Now that we've established this historical and theological context,
Yeah.
let's explore the deeper implications of what we've uncovered.
Okay, let's do it. You know, it's incredible how all these pieces connect.
It is.
But before we go any further, can you remind me about the significance of the different cross shapes?
Oh, yeah.
We touched on that briefly earlier.
Right, we did. We kind of skimmed over that.
Yeah.
It's a detail that can easily get lost.
Right.
But it might actually offer some insight into Roman society at the time. While the T-shape is the most iconic, the fact that there were variations like X and Y-shaped crosses,
Right.
and even just a single upright pole,
Yeah.
suggests that there wasn't a strict standardized method of crucifixion.
So what could those variations tell us?
Well, it's possible that different shapes were used for different crimes or for people of different social statuses.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps a more elaborate cross was reserved for a particular notorious criminal,
I see.
while a simpler one was used for someone deemed less of a threat.
Okay.
More research would be needed to say for sure,
Right.
but it's a fascinating area for further exploration.
It's like each detail, no matter how small, has the potential to unlock a deeper understanding of the past.
Exactly, and when it comes to understanding the significance of Jesus' crucifixion,
All right.
it's important to remember that this historical context matters.
Yeah.
It adds another layer to his sacrifice.
It's one thing to read about Jesus dying on a cross.
Right.
It's another to truly grasp the level of suffering that entailed.
Precisely, and that's why I think it's important to revisit the point about Jesus praying for his executioner's forgiveness.
Okay.
Can you imagine having that level of compassion while experiencing such excruciating pain?
It's hard to fathom.
It's really something.
Yeah, it really speaks to his character.
It does.
Like his unwavering love and forgiveness.
It's a moment that continues to resonate with people centuries later.
Right.
It challenges us to consider our own capacity for forgiveness.
Yeah. Are we able to forgive those who have wronged us?
Exactly.
Even when the offense is grave.
Especially when the offense is grave.
Great.
It's a tall order, but I think his example offers a pathway forward.
And it also raises questions about the nature of suffering itself.
Yeah.
Is there meaning in suffering?
Right.
Can it be transformative?
These are profound questions that have been pondered by theologians and philosophers for centuries.
They are huge questions.
They are.
But I think they're worth wrestling with.
I agree.
And they tie into the concept of faith, don't they?
They-
What does it mean to have faith when faced with suffering and adversity?
That's a question that a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah.
And it's a question that's closely tied to the theological interpretation of Jesus' death as the ultimate sacrifice,
Okay.
the Passover lamb who takes away the sins of the world.
Earlier you said that Jesus was presented as the ultimate sacrifice.
Well,
Can you expand on that a little? What does that mean in this context?
well, remember how we talked about the Passover lamb
Yes.
and its significance in Jewish tradition?
Yeah.
The lamb was a symbol of liberation and redemption.
Right.
Its blood saving the Israelites from death.
Right.
Well, in Christian theology, Jesus is seen as fulfilling that symbolism, but on a cosmic scale.
So it's not just about physical liberation anymore,
Right.
but about spiritual liberation.
Exactly. His death is seen as a sacrifice that atones for the sins of humanity, offering a path to reconciliation with God.
Okay.
It's a complex theological concept, and there are many different interpretations within Christianity itself.
I can see how this deep dive could spark a lot of further exploration and discussion.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the most valuable aspects of exploring these topics.
Yeah.
They raise questions that stay with you long after the conversation is over.
It's not about finding all the answers, is it?
No, it's not.
It's more about asking the right questions
Right.
and being open to the complexities of the subject matter.
You've hit the nail on the head.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the gruesome historical details of crucifixion
Right?
to the profound theological interpretations surrounding Jesus' death.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's up to each individual to grapple with what this story means for them.
Exactly.
What resonates?
Right.
What challenges your beliefs?
Mhm.
What inspires you?
It's a very personal journey.
It is. I
Yeah.
think we've reached a point where it's important to acknowledge the emotional weight of this topic.
Yeah.
It's not just an intellectual exercise, is it?
Not at all.
It's a story filled with pain, suffering, and ultimately hope.
Right.
It's natural to feel a range of emotions when engaging with this material.
Absolutely.
So as we approach the end of our deep dive, I want to ask you a final question.
Sure.
What would you say is the most important thing for our listener to take away from all of this?
I think the most important takeaway is this. We've explored the brutal reality of crucifixion, a method designed to inflict maximum suffering.
Right.
Yet within this context of unimaginable pain, we see a message of forgiveness, sacrifice, and love.
Yeah.
And it's up to each of us to grapple with what that message means in our own lives.
It's a story that can evoke some really strong emotions, you know?
Right.
It makes you confront the darkest aspects of humanity,
Uh-huh.
but also the potential for incredible compassion and love.
And that's the paradox at the heart of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Out of this brutal act of torture and execution comes a message of hope and redemption.
Right.
It's a message that has resonated across cultures and time, inspiring art, literature, music, and countless acts of kindness.
You know, I'm struck by how even after all this discussion, it's still difficult to fully grasp the weight of what Jesus went through.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine enduring that level of physical pain,
Right.
let alone the emotional and spiritual torment he must have faced.
It's a testament to his strength and conviction.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes his story so compelling.
Right.
He didn't just preach about love and forgiveness. He lived it, even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
His actions speak louder than words, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful example for us all to consider, even if we don't subscribe to the same theological beliefs.
Absolutely. Whether you view Jesus as a historical figure, a prophet, or the Son of God.
Right.
There's no denying the impact of his story on human history and culture.
Yeah.
It's a story that continues to invite us to examine our own lives, our own values, and our own capacity for love and compassion.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
It's been a heavy but incredibly insightful deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored the historical context of crucifixion, the prophetic elements of Psalm 22, the theological significance of Jesus as the Passover lamb,
Right.
and the profound questions this story raises about suffering, forgiveness, and faith.
It's been a privilege to delve into these topics with you,
Likewise.
and I hope our listeners have found it equally engaging and thought-provoking.
If this deep dive has sparked something in this place, you don't let the conversation end here.
Keep exploring.
Yeah, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep seeking a deeper understanding of this complex and compelling story.
And remember, even in the darkest of times, there's always potential for hope, for redemption, and for love to triumph over hate.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.